across surprisingly human for a Marvel movie. Like, there was actual heart behind the story here. I felt for these people. I believe the chemistry. I know that the bar is on the floor, but damn, I did feel something this time. And it left me with a really warm, feel-good feeling that also felt earned. It felt like a proper end to the trilogy. I don't think it's the best thing in the world. It has plenty of flaws. As a whole, it is a bit messy and loaded, and it's hard for me to personally take some of this seriously when the CGI looks so silly. But guys, I had fun, and that's enough for me. Love it or hate it, at least we got some pretty good music. Music that I can't wait to listen to with this week's sponsor, Raycon. Raycon is out here proving that you do not need to pay an arm and leg to get high quality sound and the essential smart tech listening features. I mean, you can get one pair, and then you can get another pair just in case as a backup, and you'd still be paying less than some of these other big name tech brands. As someone living in a big city, I really do appreciate their noise isolation feature. It allows me to tune out all the noise happening outside my window when I need to get some work done. But also when I want to get a workout in, I like to use their awareness mode, which allows me to stay aware of my surroundings when I'm climbing so that I don't land on top of anybody and break their bones. Which on that note, and I don't mean to imply you get really sweaty when you work out, but if you do, they're water and sweat resistant. Whether it's working out, getting some work done at home, or just walking around listening to some music, you get some real high quality sound for a pretty great price. Click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/Karsten to get 15% off your Raycon purchase. This video is brought to you by Raycon. Guardians of the Galaxy has always been one of the few Marvel films I was actually willing to defend. Despite being the first movie out of the studio to popularize and succeed at this self-aware, tongue-in-cheek style of humor that has since gotten pretty annoying and unfunny, there's a reason that it worked when the first film dropped. These guys pull it off. It feels like Marvel has been chasing the success of these movies ever since they first dropped, trying desperately hard to capture the same charm that this group nails so effortlessly, and to me at least, they haven't really succeeded, which is why I was a little hesitant going into this third one. 3 years ago, this probably would have been one of my most anticipated of the year, but this release kind of snuck up on me. I didn't even know it was coming out this week, and I'm not going to sit here and act like I was on the edge of my seat for it, just because of Marvel's track record as of recent. But guys, I gotta say, I enjoyed this movie. In fact, of the three, it might be the best Guardians of the Galaxy movie. In fact, it might just be the best Marvel movie. Well, maybe. Let's get into it. By the way, this will be spoiler-free, so cool your jets. The movie picks up where the second one left off. Peter Quill is grieving over Gamora, and they're living in a planet called Nowhere, and they're in space, and there's a dog, and yeah. But when something tragic happens, the team embark on a quest to protect each other. Talk about vague. I mean, yeah, it's a pretty simple story. Something interesting that this movie does, though, and you probably already know about this, is it spends a lot of time on Rocket, the raccoon played by Bradley Cooper. And this doesn't even feel like a spoiler. It feels like even the posters are trying to be like, hey, this one is about the raccoon, please pay attention to the raccoon. The raccoon is probably gonna die. And this focus is definitely my favorite part of the entire thing. I've always thought the raccoon was an elephant in the room, a raccoon in the room, you might say, because what the hell is he doing there? So it not only felt extremely satisfying to finally see a proper backstory for this character, but for the backstory to be the meat of the film, it surprisingly worked. The CGI animals didn't look bad at all. The rabbit thing was really strange and unsettling in a great way. At a certain point, you have to ask if it was actually good filmmaking or if the animals just looked extremely cute. But no, I would say they actually do a really amazing job with these scenes. Rocket barely says anything in them, and yet you know exactly how he feels at every given moment. You believe the chemistry he has with these others. The warm cinematography is pretty. It's such an interesting way they shoot it because it looks really nice and friendly, but they're in such a terrible situation. It had me asking, is this really a Marvel movie? And then it cut back to the normal gang, and I was like, oh yeah, definitely, it's still a Marvel movie. I wouldn't say the present day stuff is all bad, but some of it is. The first 30 minutes or so of this movie did not work at all for me. Chris Pratt seemed uninterested in the character. It reminded me a lot of his plank of wood performance in Jurassic World Dominion. The humor wasn't doing much for me. The action was okay. The rest of the cast kind of did what they've always been doing. Everything that happens on or whatever it's called, I had mixed feelings about it. I like the colors. I like how fleshy the planet looks. It all looks somehow really good. and also really bad. The CGI here looks like something out of a Spy Kids movie, and not in a charming way. It was such a frustrating feeling while watching it, because I loved it in theory, but I also couldn't help but feel taken out of the film by just how rushed some of this looked. I'm not a VFX artist, and I don't mean to discredit the countless hours all the talented post-production people put into this thing. It's more of a critique towards the studio, and having this feeling like, how does a studio with seemingly unlimited resources end up with scenes that look kind of rushed? Sylvester Stallone has a helmet on at one point, and it looks just terrible. Maybe this is just me, maybe I'm overthinking it. I'm not watching Marvel movies all that often, so just checking in with how they're doing when I went to see this movie, it just felt a little concerning. Like, wait, this is where we're at with these movies? The film just didn't really take off until it really knew what the story was. They kind of just dance around what they need to do, only slowly arriving at what feels like some sort of story 30 minutes in. But that is to say, once it got going, I was locked in. For as unfocused as that first chunk felt, the next hour and a half moves. I can always tell a movie is edited really well when, if I have to pee, I end up having to hold it for well over an hour because I'm like, this scene right here is more important than these pants. I mean, all that stuff in the suburban Counter-Earth area especially worked for me. I liked the concept, it was executed in a fun, simple, and believable way, all of the action was really well done. I'm honestly just used to these bigger budget films, specifically Marvel films, being like, okay, and then the characters went to this planet, and then they went over to this planet, and then they stopped in here, and then they went there, and then they went there. But Gunn manages to squeeze every ounce of potential out of this one area. A truly significant amount of time is spent on this planet alone, and you don't even notice that until it's over, which is pretty impressive. The third act brings things home in a pretty expected and over-the-top epic way. For as predictable as the film felt at times, they kind of got me and subverted my expectations way more than I expected, which was a pleasant surprise. This especially applies to the violence in this film. I know James Gunn can go there, but when watching these kinds of movies, anytime it seems like a character is about to get shot, the film will push back to prevent that from happening, because, you know, these are kids' movies at the end of the day. And that's what's so weird about this one, is because it's not a kids' movie, but it is at the same time. And I weirdly love that about this movie. Sometimes it will do that and play it safe and not do the violence, and sometimes it'll show all of it. Sometimes you're like, oh my god, how is it still happening on screen? They let him do this? It's not more violent than most horror movies. People need to calm down, like, this is extremely disturbing stuff. But it is kind of disturbing and shocking for a Marvel film. In some convoluted way, they do make the violence more shocking because, as opposed to a horror movie where you know it's coming, you really don't know when they're gonna let Gunn do his thing. It just hits you out of nowhere. God, there's this one scene in here that doesn't really show something happening, but will cut to these fraction of a second close-ups of what's going on, and all you need are these tiny glimpses to know exactly what is happening, and it'll make you squirm. If you've seen the movie, you might know what scene I'm talking about. I thought that little bit of violence was way more impressive than the showy yet undeniably impressive No Sleep Till Brooklyn scene that people will go crazy for. But speaking of, man, do they stay consistent with the soundtracks for these movies. I went into it with high expectations, but god damn it, does this thing have some bangers. If you can't tell, there is a lot that I really enjoyed about this movie, enough to be a pleasant surprise at the end of the day. On top of it all, I think by the end it comes across surprisingly human for a Marvel movie. Like, there is actual heart behind the story here. I felt for these people. I believe the chemistry. I know that the bar is on the floor, but damn, I did feel something this time. And it left me with a really warm, feel-good feeling that also felt earned. It felt like a proper end to the trilogy. I don't think it's the best thing in the world. It has plenty of flaws. As a whole, it is a bit messy and loaded, and it's hard for me to personally take some of this seriously when the CGI looks so silly. But guys, I had fun, and that's enough for me. Love it or hate it, at least we got some pretty good music. Music that I can't wait to listen to with this week's sponsor, Raycon. Raycon is out here proving that you do not need to pay an arm and leg to get high quality sound and the essential smart tech listening features. I mean, you can get one pair and then you can get another pair just in case as a backup, and you'd still be paying less than some of these other big name tech brands.